Welcome to Leaders Under Fire in Sports, brought to you by Culture in Sports. This is where leadership decisions, organizational culture, media pressure, and legal realities collide. Your hosts are legal expert Bob Boland, myself, crisis communication specialist Jeff Chatterton, and with leadership and culture expert Dr. Jeremy Piasecki. Together with our special guests, we break down the moments that put sports leaders under the microscope and what it really takes to respond with integrity, accountability, and impact. This is the Leaders Under Fire in Sports.
Hey, everybody. It's a great pleasure. Jeff Chatterton and I are here today with Evan Dabby. Evan and I go back a long way. He was a student of mine at NYU in the graduate program, one of our earliest and most successful ones. I keep getting older and I keep having more great successes out there, but Evan is here to talk a little bit about the World Cup with us and from a unique perspective that he has here today. The recently concluded World Cup, as of yesterday, according to our recording, provided a lot of things: controversy, opportunity, interest. It's one of those weird things that we share between Jeff and I on the Canadian and the American side of the border, because both our leaders, our president and his prime minister, were there along with Mexican President Sheinbaum, giving awards to the members, and it was a joint bid hosted by the three nations. We're really here to talk with Evan about something a little bit different. We're trying to quantify what was gained in this whole enterprise. And Evan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do now and the scope of that? That might be a good chance for our listeners to kind of hear your perspective on what you do and why you care about this.
Yeah. No, thanks. And first, as a fortunate, I'm not getting graded on today. I just want to make sure I got that square right. I'm safe.
You're safe.
Right.
The only grade you get today is if you're not controversial enough.
I get it. So, New Jersey Soccer is a membership of 120,000 players throughout the state, 10,000 coaches, 400 clubs, and we're in service to the game. So from programs such as Top Soccer, which is for players with disabilities, to recreation, to travel, competitive league programming, state cup tournaments, coaching, education, really try to run the gamut and really grow participation. So clearly the World Cup provided a really special opportunity to leverage over the last month or so.
The World Cup was not without controversy. We talked a little bit about that here, that there were complaints early on about empty seats, bad diplomacy, acts of aggression or poor sportsmanship among the nations, and a $95 train ride to the finals in New Jersey on New Jersey Transit. Despite all those criticisms, how, from your perspective, and we also missed that you have a national role too, right? Let's ask about your national role first.
So, a couple of years back, formed the Consortium of State Associations. So right now, moving up to 18 state associations representing more than a million players across the country. The business of soccer is fragmented. I think that's just historical. The growth, the size, and the scope of youth soccer is just so vast that it grew like that way over years. And now, fast forward a few decades, the way the world works, the way we communicate, it becomes more, a better ability to be connected. So that consortium was formed for shared services, to scale partnerships, to scale the size and reach of what we do. So there's just more interaction, and that's part of the outcome of this, as we'll maybe talk and touch upon today, is just a less fragmented youth soccer ecosystem, and that'll provide for more efficiencies, lower cost to play, better services, and the like. So that's that role of the consortium. That's tying over into really what we're doing these days.
Great. Evan, one of the big things about today is commentators are doing a post-mortem on this one. And there's controversy, and we'll talk a little bit about that, how that affects it, maybe lost opportunity. But they've been talking a lot about the United States particularly, but North America more broadly, on why we're not more competitive. And each time it comes back in large measure to kind of the grassroots of the event, if you will. That's you.
Yeah.
How do you see Spain's victory, and how do you see your role in what's next?
Yeah, the U.S. team, I would argue, had unprecedented excitement going into the tournament. I think they had unprecedented early success momentum. The controversy over the last game and the red card and everything going on, it was almost a microcosm of the tournament and all the different dialogues that I don't know that has been there for any other tournament. So yeah, that exit, was painful. I watched that game and it felt like just a huge missed opportunity. It was not representative of what they can do. I think I've heard of plenty of podcasts, and our New Jersey legend Tab Ramos spoke about it, and even Coach Pochettino in a news conference said it wasn't our day. Now that's a nice way of saying it, and it's not inaccurate, but that's the reality. That exit, on one hand, was not representative of what they've become, but it also highlighted that margin of error at the top, right? You're now in the top, that was the top 16 countries in the world, and we've seen like that's a bounce of a ball, a call, so the margin for error is so small, and I think while we as a soccer nation have taken another huge step forward, there's still another huge step to go from there, and it really cast a light on what they talk about, the play-to-play system, the cost to participate, the accessibility, the opportunity for every player in every community. So I think the positive outcome for folks like myself in the seat that I have is that I think we're going to take a hard look and see what the misses are and what the shortcomings of our youth soccer system, the player pathway development. U.S. soccer has been leaning in on this, and you'll hear more about this local arm, and I envision more investment in what we do locally so that we can take those next steps forward.
Everyone's been talking about the economic impact on what this has meant to the local host communities. And I've been pretty public, to be fair, on saying that I think a lot of those numbers are exaggerated, especially by the time you factor in the costs associated with staging the tournament in the first place. But off the field, the interest in the game, the parents who've watched and are like, maybe we need to sign up junior for soccer lessons. It's early yet, I get that, but do you anticipate a bump? And if so, what are you anticipating?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. I think the competitive landscape of soccer and youth soccer is very evolved. It's present. It's local. It's between states and national tournaments. So I think that will kind of hold steady. Where we see is that recreation soccer, that casual, and certainly the younger players and parents that said, "Do I want to try this sport?" And I think the excitement of the tournament and all the events and the communities and what it did culturally, I think that's where it's going to have an impact. I believe the investment, and we haven't raised our fees in 10 years, so I think the cost to participate is a big part of that. So what we've done, combined with the additional investments we hope to see from brands, from U.S. Soccer, from Soccer Forward, I think by making the game accessible, there's a huge effort at soccer at schools. Bank of America and U.S. Soccer are really creating this national program that I think we're going to be able to leverage. So it's really in that early entry, getting more kids playing, getting to every community, getting to where maybe there aren't the funds. We have an after-school program that's fully funded through brands like New York Life. There's a Mooch program. Folks can search this one, Mooch program in Trenton, that's fully free because of the donations they've collected to that underserved community. I think that's going to be the difference. It's going to be a difference between greater participation. It's going to help us find more players to enter the system and hopefully make it to the national team and get us to that next level at the national level.
Okay, so let me carry that one on.
Yeah.
Let me carry the. All right. So and I hate to be this guy, but I mean the name of the podcast is Leaders Under Fire, right? It's about the leadership decisions made around the business of sports off the field. Imagine 3 years from now, you're looking back and you go, it's really tragic, but we've kind of we dropped the ball. We've lost that opportunity. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen,
Right.
but what what will have happened
Yeah.
if you look back at this in 3 or 5 years and you go, ah, we had that chance and we didn't really take that opportunity.
Buzzword for me is alignment. I think youth soccer is as fragmented as any sport because I think it's as big as any sport. And I haven't spent my career in other, whether it's football or hockey or curling, but I think the smaller sport, the simpler it is in terms of participation. I think the participation in youth soccer is about as big as, as among the top as we know. So that provides more companies, more organizations, more governing bodies to be involved. And it got so vast, so fragmented. There's a lens on that because that's creating more fragmentation. That's creating fewer efficiencies. It's creating a less alignment, more confusion for parents. So when we look back 3 years, if we haven't taken that concept of alignment and made it clearer and easier and less expensive with less travel, involved so more kids can play, if we haven't done that, we've failed. Just plain and simple.
So I'm going to phrase that in the negative. If Jeff just asked you and you just answered the positive alignment,
Mhm.
we're going to see greater alignment, we're going to see greater opportunity, we're going to see greater access. What are the signs that you don't want to miss? What do you want to grab and capture in this period of time? How do you want to go about this? And if you miss those, what have you missed?
Yeah,
Are you thinking about numbers in particular? Or are you thinking about levels of participation? How are you capturing those?
yeah. I think of accessibility. If we don't have more kids playing, and if we haven't found those resources, um, I think I mentioned that we had our first grant from the state of New Jersey. That's going to go right into that local programming to make it affordable for communities that may not have had those same opportunities. I think about the brands, that are clearly leaned in, and we saw plenty on the commercialization of the FIFA World Cup. The ability that we have to reach kids directly and parents directly, face to face on the field in our communities. Like if we haven't taken another step forward on that front, which then, keeps that cost to play really affordable, I don't think in 3 years we'll find that reverse of the pay to play system versus what they have in other countries. I just don't see that happening. I also don't know that system's perfect, but maybe that's its own conversation of how it works elsewhere. But certainly, there's some benefits. But if we haven't uncracked some of those codes to make the game more accessible, then we failed.
You've been on the ground, obviously, now, grassroots soccer for, is it a decade now?
In
Almost
this role for about 12 years.
12 years, 12 years leading this. You obviously had the World Cup final on your home turf in your home state. You represent a larger consortium. Is there something about the proximity of that's having an effect already, or that's noticeable? Have you created buzz, or is there interest that you think you're going to capture in the next month or two? Do you have some programs lined up to do that?
Yeah, 24 hours ago, roughly, the World Cup ended, slightly less. And I woke up today and I said, and even last night I was talking to my wife, I'm not sure I have perspective on what just happened. We've been doing this sprint, this, marathon and sprint. I mean, it was a long tournament, so I'm not sure whether it was a marathon or a sprint. It was a little bit of both. But, we had such amazing community events. I mean, I was able to go to the stadium, and that itself is special. But, that's not the measure for us. We always said global attention, local opportunity. There were community events all over the place. American Dream Mall had, 39 days of parties. We had our own date there and had a spotlight on youth soccer. And before the England-Norway match, we had, state Open Cup winners. We had our Gatorade Player of the Year from New Jersey who was interviewed on stage. I watched the finals from Jersey Shore Blue Claws, their stadium, where we had an event on field, in the outfield, hundreds of kids playing games, kicking the ball around before they watched the game on the lawn at the big screen. And there was one moment that resonated with me as I sat and watched that game. Big outfield, hundreds of parents and kids watching, but off to the sides, as you can imagine, were pockets of kids naturally just picked up and started playing the game. Yeah, the finals on screen, but 8, 10-year-olds, I'd rather run around. And what do they need to play a game? They didn't need, a portable goal. They didn't need line fields. They needed 2 extra pairs of shoes and 2 shin guards. And there were no fewer than 5 impromptu pickup games playing. That's the spirit of the game. That's what's unique about it. And having studied in Italy and lived it in another culture, if we start to see more of that happen, then we're in a special spot.
Soccer's funny. So when you think about football, the various forms and the flavors of football, like in the United States, what we call football, there's the 800-pound gorilla. The NFL runs and dictates anything. And sure enough, there's the U.S. Football Association and the different, but really, we all know the NFL runs the show. The question of alignment isn't really a thing, because if the NFL doesn't want it to happen, it's probably not going to happen. The Super Bowl is the largest circus on earth, with the exception perhaps of the World Cup final, but it happens at least every year. And again, it has the 800-pound gorilla to watch it and to keep an eye on it. Alignment isn't really a question. Soccer's a whole lot more holistic. It's a lot more granular. It's a lot more organic. And then even in North America, where you have the pro league, MLS, it's not considered the same caliber, perhaps, of the English Premier League or Champions League going on in Europe. And then even then, the grandfather that shows up and dictates things, FIFA, shows up every 4 years and stuff. You talk about alignment. Is the structure of the game part of the challenge? You have 700 voices all competing to be heard.
100%. Yeah, and I think there's a recognition, and that's where I noticed that if the U.S. men had won the World Cup, I think you naturally say, "Hey, everything's great. We've solved it. We know what we're doing." But they didn't achieve to the extent that they wanted. They didn't achieve to the extent that any of us wanted. It was a great run and exciting, but it wasn't enough for what we aspire in this country, right? We don't aspire to be in the top 16, which is certainly respectable, but our culture is about being the best. So we look at it, and alignment absolutely is a problem. I mean, just my first job was with MLS, so 15 years in the professional world, and I switched over to the youth side, and I really thought it was gonna be a hell of a lot easier than it is. It's complicated. It's messy. But again, there's a lens on it. There's a recognition of it, and I think there's a commitment to try and solve that. So New Jersey, there's a youth association, there's an adult association, there's a referee association. That is just more fragmented than needs to be for growing the game, serving the same sport. That in and itself is one example, and one I'd look at it as opportunity, because I think there's all solutions. Everyone's got to commit to it, and there's now more of a commitment to saying, okay, this isn't good enough for us. When everything's fine and you're growing, whether it's in your business, let's use a business example. If you're just making a return 50%, year over year, you're like, hey, there's nothing I need to change. On the soccer side, we said where we are isn't good enough, and now we got to have the internal check and roll up our sleeves, and it's going to get a little bit messy along the way, I think.
Who's gonna end up on the winning side? Who's gonna end up losers 2 years from now?
I think the player is going to be the winner, right? It's just not friendly enough. It's not simple enough for the average player and parent to figure out, how do I navigate the youth soccer system? Why should I go here versus there? So that's who's going to win. I think there's some businesses that might lose along the way because, hey, there's opportunity, there's investment, and the more you streamline it, the less money is spent. But there's certainly enough soccer going around. There's certainly enough opportunity. But if you're purely capitalistic, I think there's some that might not, see the outcome they want, because we're really driven. U.S. soccer, I won't say everybody, but I would say U.S. soccer, the state associations, we're focused on making this more affordable, so that more can participate.
Hey, Evan, are you actually potentially saying you're going to dismantle a little bit of the youth sports industrial complex
I
that
don't
has
know if
been
we can
built up there at
dismantle,
Penn
but
State?
we're going to find a pathway that is better, right? And ultimately, if you have a good product, people are going to buy it, right? Whatever however that applies in any industry. So I think what we need to create is a pathway for the player that's, 5, 6 year old, just getting involved and kicking a ball in town, all the way up to, the elite levels. And, there's a commitment to make that user friendly, conscious of time, conscious of costs, and if the byproduct is they spend less and there's less money in the ecosystem, I don't I'm okay with that, right? That's our jobs. Like I said, we haven't raised fees in 10 years. It gets harder and harder. Eventually that's not going to continue, but we're going strong, and we're something we're really proud of.
And growth enables you not to have to raise fees then, right? Hey,
Sure. Yeah. You got to get creative. You got to diversify what you do. So it's not that we're not growing. We're just not maybe growing in the ways we had traditionally tried to grow.
can I get you to put your old MLS shin guards on for a second, or scarf on for a second, and talk a little bit about what the the MLS has survived to here, which is probably accomplishment job number one, because our prior leagues kind of fitted and started and faded. Are there some wins that this World Cup gives to the MLS? I mean, the MLS was started out of a prior World Cup back in 1994 as part of the contractual commitment of that. Do we have something that the MLS gets to advantage here, and then maybe even assert some leadership here?
Yeah, I think there's a whole bunch. I'll finish on the youth side because there's some cool things that we're doing I'm really proud of. But, Sports Illustrated Stadium, I mean, they had unprecedented activity that rolled through there. So they have, awareness and connection to that local community. And I think the professional teams know that they have to be relevant in their local communities. I heard Commissioner Garber say that years and years ago, but it's still an ongoing challenge to make yourself most relevant in your local market. So I think some credibility. You have arguably the best player to ever have played, and it's still competing in MLS in Messi, and there's more players coming. So him succeeding not just MLS, but having that same talent on the field in the World Cup final, I think gives credibility to what MLS is building. And I think they're also recognizing that they need the best league. And to do that, they need the best players playing through the youth system. So we created an Open Cup in partnership, in collaboration with the MLS Next teams, which is their top tier of the of the youth system. And again, we challenge those traditionally issues of cost and travel, something local to New Jersey that spanned all competitions, and just get the best team. They also have MLS Go, their version of NFL Flag, and we don't want to look at that as another entity competing for the player registrations. If we did that, that's just not the way that my mind thinks or wants to think. Hey, there's place for both of us. So they're investing to get more kids playing, which they'd never done. And what we're seeing is they have success reaching the parks and recs, to reach the local YMCAs where maybe we hadn't done as well. So again, there's ways of just partnering, aligning that can effectively grow participation and meet our mutual goals.
I have a two-part question. I feel I'm sorry, Bob. This is your episode. I feel like I keep weighing
No,
in.
keep going. I like this.
I'm glad I'm stoking something. I'm striking a chord. I love it.
Silence
So
is our
if
only
you
enemy.
could wipe out the entire ecosystem and completely start from scratch, all you have is the game. What do you do? What are the two or three things that you need to keep in mind that become the center corner, the tenet of how you build this thing completely without any vested interests? If you had to blow it up and restart, what would you do?
I really should have spent more time on that question, right? Like, it's if you started it today, what would it look like? And we've toyed around with those conversations, but it evolves. Like, each year in this job, I learn something more. I know I'm still learning, but to me, it comes back to that local implementation. And I wouldn't have said that when I started, right? It came from the professional world, and you need to get top, players, and you need to give the elite access and all the resources they need. But as we've seen in other countries, and I hope it tells us something, is we know there's players from other countries that are doing what they're doing without the resources that we have and the infrastructure that we have in our country. So if we make the game accessible, and that has to figure out how let's call it free, however I do this in my fake world, so that getting to play at those younger ages is available to everyone with the right level of competition. Maybe at 5 and 6, as they said in Norway, it's just for fun. We don't worry about standings because that can turn people off. And until you have the coaches leading it that are teaching them to develop, because, you don't make or break your career on that 10-year-old, state cup championship. So I think if we invert it and have more resources, more investment on that grassroots level, it's going to help everything that happens subsequent to that.
I like that. Now, the flip side of that, because I did warn you it was a two-part question, what would you change about the game itself? And I recognize that the game is
Yeah.
holy and Trinity, and I
Yeah.
will preemptively offer you mine, right?
Yeah. I mean,
The
go for it. Let's see if it's the same one.
I would like to see a rule where if part of the player is still onside, the entire player is considered onside.
I hope you're okay for me to say that's exactly where I was going. I love the
Yeah.
technology that makes it fair, right? You don't have a game lost because, as I've learned from my old Joe Macknick, who was my former colleague and supervisor, is, the quote goes along the lines is, referees decide games. Like, they need to make a decision. That's their job. That in soccer decides a game, and we should accept that. And they're making, by and large, the right decisions. The technology is ensuring that. But you're right. That's exactly where I was going. If we adjust the offside rule and it results in a tougher play for the defense and the goalie, and we get more goals, I'm okay with that.
The other option is cut out the whining, but I think that's a
Yeah,
bigger
we're
cultural
getting
issue.
there. I think we're starting
Yeah.
to see, like, hey, guess what? You go down and the games keep playing, and you can cry all you want, but we're still
Yeah.
going to go on goal. You see players getting up a lot quicker now than they
Yep.
did before. So those modifications, coach or trainer comes on, you're off the field for a minute. Like, there's a lot of good things happening, but you're right. I think the offside rule is probably the next big change, because I think we're all seeing what you're seeing.
Well, I'm
You
glad
heard it
brought
here
up
first.
alignment. Yeah. Let me ask two questions. We've done a lot of work. We're kind of running out of time on this episode, which we're very excited that you were here. I probably have three questions, but we'll kind of pepper you with them. You started your career at MLS under Doug Logan. We've spent a lot of time talking with Doug Logan. Any thoughts on Doug and his legacy?
Yeah, so I overlapped with Doug for maybe a year when I first started. So I got to know him almost in some cases more after the role as the commissioner than during, because of your ability to help us connect and stay in touch. But I think of the stories of what it took to launch that league, and the scrapping and it just in a gratitude, because there's few that were able to make that happen, and they did, and I think certainly MLS is in a very different place now, but if I'm not in his shoes, but I'd have to take tremendous pride that said, because of my work or because of Doug's work, this league is here and it's here to stay.
That's great. Don Garber, the current commissioner, has announced he's going to be retiring in the near future, 2027, I believe, as the transition plan. Can you talk a little bit about Don's legacy at the MLS and its effect on soccer, even to the grassroots level?
I spent a lot more time with Commissioner Garber than Commissioner Logan, just by nature of the timelines. And, I still stay in touch, and we developed a very, direct relationship over the years. When I took this new job, he invited me in and we sat down and talked, about my time there. And I think two things. on one hand, he will tell you, I think at least he always remembered, I remember him telling me, he's an events and marketing guy, right? So I was in events, and when I missed that flyover by a few seconds, I knew I didn't want to see him that day. You know, I wanted to hide, and I knew it because he inspired that level of commitment, success, and that's why the league is what it is today. And he was tough, and he challenged you, and he was an incredibly sharp person, and that's not a surprise to anyone. But the other side of it was, I think that, a compassion and in the individual who he is. I told you how he invited me in to the office when I took my new job, and was just incredibly supportive of the decision, and they were very good to me for the time I was there. But more than that, I think it showed how he took an interest in people. When my mom passed away, he was there and came to our house, and as a relatively junior employee, and it's something that I will never forget. And it just showed the type of not only professional that he is, but the person he is, and just incredibly, admire him, and thankful, because now I get to watch the Red Bulls games with my son, and he's as passionate, and we have that to enjoy, and so many people part of that, but it's hard to imagine many more involved in that success and everything that he created.
Jeff?
You know what? I'm cognizant of our time. I'm cognizant of Evan's time. I want to thank you. That was clean. That was quick. I think that's you are the guest we all hope to have. Right?
You very much are, and we've been wanting to get you on, and we're glad we could get you today of all days. Hey, let me ask you one exit question.
Yeah.
If you were to think about this World Cup that on your turf, the one you've experienced kind of as a full-fledged adult now in the world, working in the sport, directly in North America and in New York and New Jersey, what grade would you give it?
Oof. I want to say a B, because the success, the stadium, the full stadiums and everything about it, and I've been to the game, so the experience was certainly better than that it was made out to be, and I was scared to go to the games just because of all the hype around it and the drama. But the reality is you have to look at these, and I guess as my personality, there's always more, right? We could have gotten more kids to could have been more events. Like, there's never enough. It was just such, a momentous, once in a generational opportunity. And while we were, at the American Dream Mall and at Sports Illustrated Stadium, and told you about the Blue Claws Stadium, and they host us, countless other events throughout the state, but you just felt like you wanted to do more. So yeah, thrilled, and the perspective, and I've been asking people the last 24 hours to help me get perspective, and it's very positive. TV ratings, just mammoth growth. So that shows that we delivered on it, but it's just hard to believe you couldn't do more. And I guess that's part of what's going to drive us to be better.
In 5 years, if you were going back to regrade, what would make it an A?
I think if we see that goes back to accessibility and participation. If we see participation double, then it had that impact. If we see our ability to get into communities where they just don't have the resources to run these, programs, full-fledged with all the resources without that, kind of subsidized commitment. If we haven't gotten to all those areas that want to play, but maybe don't have the resources, if we've solved that, that's the other piece of the puzzle.
Evan Dabby, thank you so much. You are the guest. You were the student that every professor wishes they have. You were the guest today that we are so lucky to have on Leaders Under Fire in Sports. And thanks for making some time to get this done and to have this conversation.
You've been listening to Leaders Under Fire in Sports by Culture in Sports. These moments under pressure don't just shape headlines, they shape people. They shape organizations and the cultures they leave behind. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jeff Chatterton, joined with Bob Boland and Dr. Jeremy Piasecki, and our special guests as we've examined what leadership looks like when it truly matters. If this conversation challenged the way you think about leadership in sports, We invite you to continue to learn with us at cultureinsports.com, because influencing positive change starts with how leaders respond when they're under fire.